Hey, here's just a quick video on how to get your Pro 1 by Behringer back to a default preset. So you can hear I have this kind of a preset, which is great and all, but I want to kind of get back to a starting point. So if you want to get back to a starting point, the best thing you can do is turn down everything usually. So not everything, but you're going to turn down a lot of stuff. So you want to make sure that all of these are at zero. You want to make sure I usually set these switches to wheel because that's to do with a keyboard and usually it won't be directly affecting any of the synthesizer. These are modulation things, so they'll modulate, make these things move basically. But if you set it to wheel, you're kind of better off. Then you want to send all the switches to off. So set all the switches to off, right? So that's that section sorted. Next, you want to make sure that the frequency here is at 0, and you should just put this on to like a 1 or a 2. 1 I think is grand. Pick a shape like a triangle and then make sure the pulse width is down to 0. Now the pulse width really only affects the square, but you don't have to worry about it. Make sure the sync is off. Turn the volume of oscillator 1, let's say this one, just to 50%. You can turn this one down. You can turn the noise all the way down. We'll come back to this oscillator. Set this to 0, set this to 1. You can try a different one or you can keep it off. You can try the triangle here. You want to set the pulse width down to 0. I'm going to actually go for this triangle because the pulse width doesn't affect. The LFO won't technically work if you have these things turned off, so you can turn it down to 0 anyway. You can turn that turns it off. You want to make sure the sequencer is on off. You want to make sure this one's on record. You want to make sure the ARP is on off. You can set this to poly or mono. I think mono will be better. Set the mode to normal, set the mode to normal, set the drone off, turn down the glide all the way to 0 and set it to normal. And then the cutoff, what I do is just to get the full encompass of the sound, I turn the cutoff all the way up so there's nothing being cut off. Turn the resonance all the way down so there's no bump on it. Turn the envelope all down so the the frequency envelope doesn't affect this. Turn the keyboard amount down so you kind of get a default tone. Then this doesn't really matter. You can just kind of, because this is basically how much you're using of this. So if you have this turned all the way down, you're not even going to use that. So you could just keep that off altogether. And then for the amplifier, there's two ways I like to do this. Is I turn everything off except for the sustain. I'll turn the sustain all the way up. And what I'll show you what it does. If I turn it all the way down, you get no sound. Turn it all the way up, I get that triangle. So that's the basic default preset that I would use usually if I'm making a sound, if I'm crafting a sound. Now you can also do it in decay. So if I turn the sustain off, it's kind of the same thing. Add a release, adds a tail to it. Now if you can't hear sound coming out, there might be a couple of issues why this is. You might have the oscillator turned down. So if you basically turn the sustain up, right? And then you turn the oscillator up, you get that sound. Turn the cutoff all the way up, you get the full sound. Now, if the oscillator volume here was down and both of these were down, you wouldn't hear anything, so you'd have to turn them up. Same with the cutoff. Always check the cutoff. If the cutoff is all the way down, that's why you're not getting audio, so turn that up. So these three always have to be up if you want to get sound, if you're not getting sound. The other thing I think I would mention is, yeah, this is the second volume. But that's not really, that's when you start crafting your sound. So I think just as a default template, this is a great idea. Just kind of keep it like that. Remember that's your default. That turns off all your stuff and just keeps your sound a bit perfect. Make sure the master tune as well is on the center part so that you're not too tuned out. But yeah, just take that as a default template and you can come back to this if you need to.